Let's go back to the Madlanga Commission. Of course, this is probing allegations of criminality, political interference and corruption in the criminal justice system. It resumes today, and this time a new witness is expected to take the stand. For the latest on this, of course, we've got Sakina out and about in Pretoria, and she's joined by some analysts to talk a little bit about what to expect and what we've heard so far. Sakina, good morning to you again.
Well, good morning, Leanne, and thanks so much. And of course, it is day 22 of the Madlanga Commission, and I'm joined by Professor D Kotzé and Kholofelo Rakubu just to talk about what we have observed so far. And Prof, if I could start with you, just straight into it, what would you say has been the most significant emergent evidence that has been led so far here at the Commission?
Well, you talk about 22 days. It was very eventful, these 20 days, starting with General Nkwanasi, first of all. Was in a sense the origin of this whole process. And then the National Commissioner and the Minister of Police is, and now these in-camera witnesses. So it's a very wide spread of evidence that we've heard about. I think where many people have maybe had some doubts about General Nkwanasi's presentation on the 6th of July, it becomes much more real, I would say now, much more on the ground, especially last week. It was the in-camera testimonies of persons who are now investigators, who are directly affected or involved in this. So I think for the South African public in general, it's becoming now really a matter of reality. It's not anymore just in the news. It is now something which we hear about, and it continues. There's still some events that we hear about, and it is now really a question of what will be, I mean, we are looking now forward, but what will be the powers of this commission in order to intervene? Because it's good and well just to hear about it, but what will be the interventions in order to change it around, to stop it, to reform it, to restructure it, so that this cannot continue? Because it is going into a direction which is, especially in some parts of South Africa, like KwaZulu-Natal, the Western Cape, Gauteng, where it starts to affect many people. It's not just in isolated areas.
And that is, of course, for many people, the nub of the matter, because we know, Mr. Rakubu, for example, that yes, there will be findings from this commission, but as we saw with previous commissions, the Zondo Commission most recently, how far does that take us? And it also raises the question of what we've seen so far in terms of substantiating the claims that were made by Lieutenant General Nkwanasi, because it's one thing to make the claims, but how far has this commission gone thus far in terms of the evidence that we've heard in substantiating some of those allegations?
We definitely agree that this commission has made progress in building a narrative of how your criminal network, political interference and compromised police units interact. So far, it has presented patterns of the obstructions, manipulation and selective enforcement. Indeed, you are right. We have to question to what extent will this commission assist, because the Zondo Commission produced a massive, beautiful report, but then still lacks prosecution and all other mechanisms. So the powers are still limited to date, but then we just appreciate the dialogue around the exposure and how this criminal network infiltrated our justice system and how compromised the policing is, and how the nature of the syndicate protection by our top officials. So we're still interested, but one indeed questions where to from here? Where is this taking us? Are we going to have a beautiful report and then see certain political figures reappointed somewhere or deployed somewhere? Will there be efficient or structural reforms that we've been talking about? Will there be a scientifically proven accountability mechanism? Because I think a paradigm shift is imminent here, and we need something that we've never done before. So paradigm shift will suggest also political will. Are we moving in the right direction? Are we politically supported to ensure that this commission's findings find its place in the South African crime landscape or policing landscape, I am not so sure on that one.
And it is, of course, a difficult one, Prof, because politicians have also been implicated in these allegations, apart from the criminal justice system as a whole. But then, in terms of just crossing the threshold from the allegations to proof, do you think that any substantial work has been done so far here at this commission?
To be honest, I don't think that's the role of a commission. The commission's role is very much that of gathering of information, exposing it, bringing it together. That was what the Zondo Commission is. It doesn't have judicial powers. The formation of IDAC was in a sense an intervention in the case of the Zondo Commission. Unfortunately, IDAC itself is now in the crossfire in terms of whether it is doing what it is supposed to do or not. But what is important is that the evidence that's presented to this commission, in a sense, speeds up the process of any investigations by the police, the Hawks, and then later on the NPA. So it moves from the commission then to the law enforcement components of our society. So I don't think the expectation should be is that the commission can produce the results. It rather opens up, it exposes, it makes it possible for the public to see. And I very much agree with the idea that it creates a narrative, because it means it cannot be hidden anymore. It cannot be argued that, well, this is just allegations. There's much more ground about and evidence about it. And I think it's very important for the public, because the same with the Zondo Commission, it's in a sense a way in which the public becomes very much better informed about what this situation is. The politicians cannot run away anymore. The top structure of the police also. And I think that that for me is really significant. And hopefully it even affects the criminals. That some of them are in custody at the moment. And I think the fact that it is now in the public, it's an open, means that they can't hide behind the sort of the screen of that people don't know, they are not informed. We are going to watch much more closely if we see incidents of who are involved in that.
And that's so interesting, Prof, as you talk about being exposed to the elements and you're screening and our banners flying away with the wind. But, so we're being exposed here as well. But all the same, Ms. Rakubu, with regard to what Prof just says, something's going to have to change, because there's no way, at least from the South African public's perspective, that we can hear the sort of evidence that has been led here and things just go back to the way they were.
Definitely, like I said, a paradigm shift. A lot will have to change. And with these commissions now, we've learned of the constitutional power struggles. Then we are now taken back to the drawing board to verify if the structures in place are indeed where they're supposed to be, the interpretation or the understanding, and also the thin lines and the gray areas that allows the overstepping that we were taught by these commissions. So a lot will have to be done, because if now we talk of the structural reform, that will definitely deal with the erosion of the public trust in the law enforcement institution. And now what kind of reform will we require that will tap into the political protection of the criminal acts or criminal activities? Because there's a lot. And I've been also worried about the scope of this commission, because you touch from police, you go to corrections. Now we still have interest in traffic or these metros, if I were to say so. Are we doing enough? Is the pace in line with what has been required? I think we're still all over the place, and the parallel committees as well are not assisting in this area, because they are digging somewhere else. This one is digging. So there's a lot of cluttered information, and now one is worried about how will it then be gathered, purposefully to make sense, to arrive at a directive finding or actionable recommendation.
But isn't that indicative of the space that we find ourselves in? The fact that things have become so muddled and that it is just so systemically entrenched that it really makes it difficult for one to even, understand where do you start in addressing this.
Indeed. I also like the sequence of these witnesses. Mkhunu came first at some point. Now more information will be coming in, which could have been during Mkhunu's place, could have been verified. But I think we're all over the place. This is new to us, I think. How we handling witnesses, how we gathering evidence, and the nature of name dropping. It's also implicating or confusing the process. But we're hoping that at the end of the day, they can gather facts because with this public exposure, there are many investigators now. Everybody's just trying to find their space and push a particular narrative. But we're hoping that the commission and the committee will be able to then gather facts and arrive at actionable recommendation and also verification of facts, right? Because we're receiving a lot of information, and I'm sure today there will be more bombshells. Because remember, last time there were bombshells, but then they were cut short. So today we might even get to clarification or verification of those financial trails, financial transactions, and the nature of the political interference or political protection. What is it that they did? To what extent was investigation compromised? Who said who? Because remember, the last week there were also name dropping of the top SAPS officials. So today we need to connect dot. Who did what, who gave what instruction, and also the political infiltration in the raids, because they were also name dropping during raids. Who assisted, who compromised the investigators, and to what extent? So today, verification of financial trades, who got paid, their allegations of 2 million, was indeed 2 million, are there transactions to support those allegations, to assist the commission arrive at that actionable recommendation, because that's all what they can do, nothing much.
And who was where when?
Yeah, who was where when, 2 million to who, if there's a BNB indeed, where is it, the address and so forth, ownership and so forth. Now we need a tangible evidence, a transaction, how much money from this account to that account, 2 million from where to where, and the kind of protection, to what extent were you protected? And remember, we're still also interested in the judiciary granting of bail inappropriately. Who was responsible? To what extent were the issues around bail granting not thoroughly analyzed, and to what extent, so that we can move? We've got information cluttered around here.
Yeah, I understand this. I personally don't think the Commission is going to give answers for this because it's a lot of detail. We are only in phase 1. Yeah. Phase 2 must still follow, where there's sort of the process of interrogation, of cross-examination, if you want to call it that. And then General Nkwanasi must come back in phase 3. Yeah. So there's still a lot that must happen in order to be able to position this information that comes here. I'm cautious to accept what we hear now already. This is in a sense the one side of the story. In the beginning, when General Nkwanasi and General Masemola was here, it was the original version that we heard. Now we have heard from the minister and others the counter version, the counter narrative. And this is what is, in the end, the role of this commission, is to say, what is it that they believe as the commission, and that will be put into the public space. But I think the follow-up, and what is interesting is also what happens in Parliament, with the parliamentary committee. Because I'm slightly concerned that they can, in the end, maybe not work against each other, but they are not always complementary enough. You know? Think, for example, if they reach different conclusions, what then? You know? So that is what, and their terms of reference are to some extent different. That of the Commission is much wider than that one in Parliament. Parliament has much less time. This commission also has actually very little time. So that terms of reference that she's talking about, I don't think they're going to get to those. My expectation is that they will concentrate on the focus areas that they are busy with at the moment, in order to, in the end, reach conclusions, because in the end it's not in order to identify individuals. That's not the purpose of this commission. It's about how to identify trends and what has happened in the past in terms of relationship between the police, the ministers, and the syndicates.
We have less than a minute. So from what we've learned, lessons learned from previous commissions, I would imagine that this time around there needs to be more of a focus on what will allow for better follow-through so that there is ultimate tangible outcomes. So what do you think this commission has struggled with so far, Prof, very briefly, and Ms. Rakubu, in terms of what they can look for in order to, Prof Rakubu, so that they can actually move forward to that?
Well, I think it's to keep their focus on the main issues. I think where they are now is going almost too much into detail, I personally would say, which is, it's interesting for the public and maybe for them to give a perspective, but I don't think it's about the essence of the issues. So I think they have to determine what is the real core issues that they must concentrate on, and keep away from the too much of the detail.
It will be difficult for them not to focus on the too much of the detail. As I don't agree with Prof D. The way it started, they need the nitty-gritty of the transactions. So where do we now draw the line to say, go to this and avoid that? Because they focus on they are led by the affidavits. They will be saying to the witness, take us to A and B and C as per the affidavits. So the way it began, that is how it should follow through. That is why now I've been saying we need to even check the transaction, who communicated to who, which WhatsApp instruction and so forth. So when now do we stop that to say, go to whatever? Because we will be questioning, before you arrive at that instruction, was there a phone call and at what time? Because that is how this was shaped in the beginning, and that is how it has been driving the narrative towards particular findings.
Prof Rakubu, Prof Kholofelo, thank you so much speaking to us about what we've heard so far here at the Madlanga Commission. It is day 22, and of course Kenny will have more for us also in terms of what's to be expected